And this invention of yours can even make me sound like you.
That's right.
Testing. 1, 2, 3.
This is amazing!
This is Adam's World, an educational program in the same vein as Sesame Street that aims to teach children all about the religion of Islam. While I was doing some research for another video, I stumbled upon it and it sent me down a nostalgia-riddled fever dream. I asked some of my family members, all with varying responses, and the majority of them didn't remember even after being shown a picture of it, which I found strange. Here was this show that had such a big impact on me and the people around me that had fallen into obscurity. Then I had a thought. How many other shows had had a similar treatment, neither gone or forgotten? Shows that once had fan bases or are still on popular streaming services that have been left behind. It may be familiar when you see it, but even when you do, you can't place it. Shows that are on the tip of your tongue. Not quite nostalgic, but occupying somewhere completely different in your distant memories. Somewhere liminal. I would be very surprised if you were watching this video and you don't already know what a liminal space is, but just in case, I'll give you a brief description. The literal definition is a transitional place. Think hallways and corridors. However, the term was popularized to describe uncanny and eerie places that simultaneously look nostalgic. They are not inherently scary, but envision empty malls, offices, and Chuck E. Cheese's, places normally bustling with life that look out of place when empty and abandoned, in a state of limbo. So after I realized that shows can have a similar feeling, it made me think what other shows would fit in this category, but not only to me, but other people as well. But first, let's set some criteria. To most of the people watching this video, Adam's World is completely unheard of, which is fine. At this point, that show has crossed the Rubicon and has become forgotten media. I couldn't even find that much information about it online. But for the rest of the shows that will be in this video, the idea is to invoke the same reaction that I had for a large group of people. Ideally, I want there to be a few shows that make you go, oh shit, I forgot about that. I also want to avoid shows that had a resurgence or a reboot. For example, I really wanted to cover Teen Wolf, but the fan base was strong enough to warrant a movie back in 2023, despite said movie being absolutely horrible.
How? Like this?
Same thing for shows like Skins. While it doesn't have a reboot, it has managed to stay considerably popular over the years, mostly because literally every actor within the show has managed to have a successful career. With that being said, let's move forward. Beginning with a personal favorite of mine, The Society. The Society is a one-season Netflix original that was promptly canceled after that one season. Netflix has a huge problem with this, by the way, but that's a topic for another day. Anywho, the show depicts a group of high schoolers that go on a field trip out of town, but when they return, they find their small town is entirely empty. Not a single person is left except for the 225 students that went on the trip to begin with. All the stores are still full, the electricity works, and so does the cell service. It's as if they're in a carbon copy of their own home. Can you guess what the first thing they did was? Bitch, you guessed it. They immediately raided the stores for beer and threw a party. Most didn't even go home, meaning most didn't realize how fucked their situation was. Their town may look the same, but they are completely cut off from the outside world in the middle of a dense forest. The show functions as a mystery with one big question. What the hell is going on? At the same time, they are also trying to survive. At first, they had stores with food and even a hospital, but the food and medicine start to run out. People start to miss their family, and reality starts to kick in. Especially when, on the first expedition out of the town, a girl dies out in the surrounding forest due to an allergy. So now that they have a better scope of the situation at hand, what do? The show is designed to make the audience ask questions. Questions like, what was that smell that everyone complained about before the field trip? What was the marking on the church? Where did the bus drivers that dropped the students off go? They were in the town when it transitioned to whatever it is now. How did they leave? Does the forest entrapping them go on forever, or is there something else out there? Even if there is something else, how did it get there? How was it affected? Are they even still on Earth? Oh, and who's this fucking guy?
You don't get off on this?
It doesn't look like that woman's having any fun. I'm gonna go home.
Ever since you were born, I never had just one day that was mine until now. All right, give me the key. You little
Yeah, he was a school shooter waiting to happen. More importantly, it forces you to think about what you would do in the same situation, which in turn makes it easier to immerse in the story itself. Now, I'll admit, this isn't like the best show of all time or anything like that, but it does have a unique spark to it. Which really sucks, because right after all the females force the men to adhere to true socialism by threatening to withhold sex, not as bad as it sounds.
Kinda worked. Everything's made in China.
Yeah, China's a poor example. The party took complete priority over the workers. In reality, we've never seen a true socialist state.
The story really picks up leading to the death of the town's voice of reason and council head. The society also has this eerie similarity to the 2020 pandemic with everyone being trapped inside. A reality that now feels like this bygone era that we are still reeling from the effects of. Just imagine how many shows across the world were canceled for the same reason. Shows that fell into this wasteland of what could have been. Unfortunately, there's virtually no hope of this society coming back. There was a fan base there, but most of that has all likely died down by now. The best we could hope for is a remake, which I don't hate the idea of, because the concept is truly amazing. As far as the season that's already out, the story isn't complete, but it's still an interesting watch, and you'd be surprised how fast anarchy breaks out. But in their defense, they're fucking high schoolers. What do you expect? Speaking of teenagers in a messed up situation, we should mention the British TV show by the name of Misfits. I want you to imagine if you took the characters from Skins and gave those little hobknockers superpowers.
Hobknockers?
Then you got Misfits. The show starts off with a small group of about 5 young adults that are forced into community service for a bunch of petty crimes. Then, in the midst of cleaning up, a hailstorm hits and the group is suddenly struck by lightning, giving all 5 of them different superpowers. Then pretty much immediately after that, all sorts of hijinks start to happen around the city as they deal with people that also got those same sort of superpowers. Now, for most of these shows, I'm not going to name every character just for the sake of time, and I'm going to try to focus on the story as a whole. However, for this show in particular, I'm going to name each character and their corresponding superpower because the power they receive is intrinsically connected to what they are struggling with in their lives. Kelly is the first to realize her superpower of telepathy. This happens when she is with her boyfriend and she hits him because all he can think about is shagging her. This seems to be related to the idea of how self-conscious he is about her accent, which is heavier than everyone else's, and her looks, and just her general being. Now she constantly knows what people are thinking about her. Simon, the shy, quiet weirdo, gets the ability to turn invisible, obviously because he's lonely and honestly just wants to make some friends. Also, he doesn't just turn invisible. It's more like he turns intangible, or he doesn't exist. You can't hear, see, or feel his presence at all, which is a very nice take on invisibility. But just because he's a weirdo, don't sleep on him. He turns out to be the GOAT later on in the series. Next we got Alicia. Now Alicia is the resident pretty girl that serves as this show's direct path to maintain its young male audience, if you catch my drift.
Do I suck or blow?
Yup, man, yup! Yup! I remember her, she was the slut.
But jokes aside, her character is more than just fan service. The power she's given, or really I should say the curse, is quite a weird one. Whenever she is touched, she immediately makes the person touching her want her. By far the worst power in the show, and arguably ever. It's a touchy subject, but it also makes one question what intimacy really means and how someone views themselves when they are objectively an attractive person. Curtis is the voice of reason for the group as he doesn't really fit the delinquent moniker. He was a star athlete that was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now he constantly dwells on that moment, wishing he can go back and change it for the better, which lands him with the ability to travel back in time? What? Every time I remember what his power is, I'm genuinely surprised. Like, that hardly seems fair. We got a mind reader, a super stalker, and a freaked out rogue. And bro gets an S-class power. To be fair, I can't remember just how far back he can go, but even if it's just 5 seconds, I would still say that's by far the best power here. I mean, do you know how much you can do with 5 seconds? Finally, we have Nathan. Now his power is really good as well, but the kicker is we don't know what it is until the last episode of the first season. At first I didn't want to spoil it because unlike most of these shows that I will be discussing, these characters actually get some semblance of a conclusion. More on that in a sec. But with Nathan, it's also kinda hard to figure out what his power has to do with his struggle. You see, Nathan is a wild card that thinks everything is a joke and he's on his own, but mostly because his mom kicked him out. You could argue he's a survivor, but that doesn't really fit. More like he just doesn't give a damn about what happens to him, but that's not entirely true either. So it is a bit of a shocker when he dies in the final episode, but then springs back up like nothing ever happened, meaning that the class clown is immortal. The only reason I didn't give this the #1 power spot is because more often than not, it's considered to be a curse as well. Where Misfits succeeds the most is in the ways the cast reacts to what's happening to them. The powers they deal with are comedic or just absurd, like telepathic balding or just acting like a dog. Not turning into one, just acting like one. And I mean, you can do that for free. Just look at furries. The show also has a sense of humor that I think is still just as potent if you watched it today, which I recommend you do. But I should probably tell you what caused the show to die off. Well, remember Nathan? Not only is he the closest thing to a protagonist that the show has, but he's also the glue that keeps the show together. Well, by the end of the second season, he's gone. In fact, by the end of the show, the entire cast is gone, and it turns into a revolving door of actors. Even the powers change for the characters that remain as the series go on, which is a great way to update the status quo, but changing the actors one by one is a great way to completely destroy momentum. This show is really in a lane of its own, and I must say you can't really find anything like it. I can't tell if it's the tone, the dark color palette, and convincing characters, or just the English accents.
What makes you think that you're better than us?
What is that accent?
Is that for real?
What, you trying to say something now then, yeah?
That's just a noise. Are we supposed to be able to understand her?
Hey yo, real quick. Do y'all remember The Hub? The Discovery Kids channel rebrand from the early 2010s? Popular for shows like Transformers Prime, My Little Pony, and Dan Versus? Of course you don't, nigga. Nobody does. That shit was ass. But you know what was gas? Well, actually, those shows were fire. The channel just never really caught on. But you know what else was fire? A little known show by the name of R.L. Stine's The Haunting Hour. The Haunting Hour is considered to be the spiritual successor to Goosebumps, but really it's more like its angsty older brother. The crazy part is that the fans that have actually seen this show would probably say it's the better of the two. And trust me, I know just how goated Goosebumps was. But straight up, The Haunting Hour is legitimately scarier than Goosebumps. While it may have some absolutely horrible acting, there is still some charm to it. They even played a warning before every episode suggesting that you watch it as a family rather than alone. And for the most part, when I would watch it alone, I didn't really ever get scared if at all, but damn it, I like this dumbass show. Considering this show is an anthology just like Goosebumps, there aren't really characters or a through line to discuss, so instead, I'm going to quickly highlight some personal standout moments that I found particularly scary. This is going to be a quick one, so try to keep up. And no, I'm not talking about the doll episode, Really You. Everyone mentions it whenever they talk about this show, and at this point, it's been memed to hell.
Is sitting peacefully like a well-mannered young lady. Which Lily do you want to be?
Yeah, that shit's cursed. Starting with Dreamcatcher, this time around we focus on a girl going to summer camp, and she's being bullied by some other girl that clearly has nothing else better to do. And just like the episode suggests, the main girl starts to have horrible dreams that leave a mark when you wake up. Then this other girl starts to have the bad dreams too, when they both realize that the bully cut both of their dream catchers, leading to them doing the same in retaliation. Then this happens. And we find out that the third girl was kidnapped by the spider monster and taken in the dream world. So the main girl tries to get the help of the bully to save the other friend. She says no, then she says yes, but really she just wants to watch them both suffer. She is evil. The funny part is, all three of them end up trapped in the monster's web, but in a sick twist, the two nice girls are saved by the alarm they set before they fell asleep. But the bully is left to die because she decided to sleep somewhere else, meaning she couldn't possibly hear the very alarm that saved the other two. Now, if all that sounds confusing as hell, it's because it is. The quality of every episode is pretty comparable to your average horror short film here on YouTube, if not a little worse. Probably because it's all children actors. In fact, somehow the acting in this feels way worse than it did in Goosebumps, but that's also probably because it still has that whole 90s aesthetic working for it. So the corny acting leans more towards camp rather than outright bad. The Haunting Hour also had a who's who of popular child actors at the time, like Debbie Ryan, Dylan Minetti, Ariel Winter, Rico Rodriguez, and Nolan Goud. Also, it's a little weird that all three of them were in this, right? Anywho, let's cover one more episode. My personal favorite, Flight. Now, I should probably tell you that I have a very rational fear of flights. I mean, they are literal death metal tubes doing a controlled fall in the air. So that being said, this episode hits a little different, especially because it follows a kid flying on a plane by himself, something I did multiple times around the same age. So this kid is on his way to visit his dad and sits next to some guy who sees he's clearly nervous about being alone, and the two have some brief conversations. The real threat though is the mysterious old lady that keeps smiling at the kid and briefly turning into the Grim Reaper. Oh, and to make matters worse, the kid finds out that the plane is carrying a dead body. So the kid gets the man to see the old lady shift so they can both figure out why. Surprise, surprise, the adult the kid is talking to is a ghost and the Reaper is after him. So now the kid has to talk the ghost into leaving with the Reaper because the more the ghost fights, the more it messes with the electrical system on the plane. If you're wondering why that's happening, I don't know. And the Grim Reaper is just letting him do that, by the way. So now the kid is forced to play therapist, and it actually works. They somehow manage to land safely, except at the end of the episode when the old lady says something right before the credits roll. In my memory, she said something that basically amounted to, "Don't get too comfortable," with her being deaf and all. But on rewatch, I have no idea what she says. Like, maybe I'm tripping, but you tell me.
Well, I figured. Later.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Huh?
Without a doubt.
This show had like 76 episodes, and no one ever remembers it. Like, even if you ask someone right now what Goosebumps is, even if they can't remember an episode, they for sure remember that theme song. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. But the haunting hour? I don't think I've met a single person that knows what it is. Even I had to find some episodes to rewatch for this video because at this point, the show is just a memory of a memory to me, and I used to wait for new episodes weekly. Luckily, if you want to watch all the episodes, they're here on YouTube. It would be great to put on the background for like a Halloween party or some shit like that. I don't know. You don't need me to tell you what to do. Speaking of Goosebumps, y'all remember that episode where that kid was bullying his brother so his parents sent him to a military school that turned out to be a cloning facility where they sent clones back to families to be some sort of sleeper agent? No? Just me? Okay, well, that's basically the premise of Tower Prep. But this time, the kids have superpowers. We gotta talk about Hollywood's need to give young adults powers of mass destruction. Like, imagine if it happened this often in real life. Anyway, Tower Prep came out during that weird era when Cartoon Network decided, you know what guys, we need to compete with Disney and Nickelodeon and have our own live action shows. And you know what? I ain't complaining, because these shows were peak. Level Up, Destroy Build Destroyed, Do What Would Happen, Unreal History, and of course, Tower Prep. Tower Prep follows Ian, who randomly wakes up on a school campus with no idea what's going on, so he must figure it out on his own with virtually no clues at all. Hey, is that dude from Austin and Ally? He quickly realizes that there are questions he needs to answer, like how did he get here, what here even is, and more importantly, why is he here? So his first thought is to say, f everybody else got going on, and he decides to make a run for it. That's when he realizes there's a huge wall keeping all the students trapped, quickly letting Ian know that he is not a student, but instead a captive. Now, I must say, the first episode is low-key ass, like actually hard to watch, weird cuts and bad acting, the whole shebang. But once episode 2 kicks in, I started to legitimately think it was good. The core group works pretty well together, and the mystery that they solve every episode to unravel the secrets about the school itself is usually pretty interesting. This is one of those shows that I wanted to finish watching after I got the information I needed for the video. The show follows a main cast of 4 kids, Ian, Gabe, CJ, and Suki. Like I mentioned earlier, they each have special abilities. Ian has prefects. Simply put, he can see a couple seconds in the future, making him able to react incredibly fast. And he's also the only real fighter in the group. Gabe has hypersuasion, which basically means if you have a conversation with him, he can persuade you to do anything, although it's pretty finicky and pretty much only works whenever the show wants it to. CJ can read body languages as if it's a separate language entirely, and last but not least, Suki can copy people's mannerisms from anything to how they write to how they sound. We eventually find out that the point of the school is to teach the students with these abilities to hone them. Now to what end? That's what we must figure out. But where the show excels is the way the group works together to solve the mystery of the day. It has a feeling of a Saturday morning cartoon, but also has a pretty impressive narrative structure, probably because the show's creator is responsible for literally all of the animated Batman and Justice League TV shows, which brings me to the reason why the show was canned. While Cartoon Network did end up realizing that the live action thing isn't really their vibe, Tower Prep was actually pretty successful. In actuality, that was the problem. It was successful, yes, but successful with the wrong audience. Tower Prep had grown too popular with girls, and the network was worried that girls weren't gonna buy merch related to the show, so they axed it. And apparently at the time they were prioritizing their boy audience. Clearly they haven't heard of Sailor Moon, or Powerpuff Girls for that matter. And what a shame, because the common denominator with the shows in this video is the insane potential. Just imagine what would have happened if they stayed the course, but I guess we have unrelenting Johnny Test reruns to rely on. Okay, let's take a little break. Y'all wanna hear a joke? No? Well, I'ma tell you anyway. So a werewolf, a vampire, and a ghost walk into a bar, and they're asked, what's the worst thing about being a monster? They look at each other, and in unison, they all say, being human.
Boo this man!
Damn, tough crowd. But lucky for me, that happens to be the exact plot of our next show, the sci-fi classic, Being Human. The show is about three people who live together while being different type of mythical beings, specifically a werewolf, vampire, and ghost respectively. Think New Girl, but instead of goofy lovable people, we got flawed lovable monsters. Our resident werewolf Josh and Aiden the vampire move in together to keep each other from hurting normal people. When Josh and Aiden move in together, they just so happen to move right into an actively haunted house, which is where they meet the dead wife of their landlord Sally, a ghost that only other monsters can see, which in turn leads to very interesting interactions as the show revolves around the fact that one major character can't talk to anyone other than the other two major characters. And another monster. She can't even leave the house for the first half of the first season. In fact, this show has a lot of explanations as to how their world works despite our understanding of each monster. For example, the vampires have to ask permission to enter homes, but they manage to evolve to a point where they are simply just sensitive to sunlight. So instead of this, they do this, which I thought added to the overall world building. Being Human's narrative basically revolves around the three main characters trying to fit in while dealing with each of their own issues. Josh is ashamed of who he is, so he's completely abandoned his family and friends once he realized he was a werewolf, and now it's really hard for him to let anyone in. Aiden is trying to work against his darker nature, but his past of being the right-hand man of a literal vampire cult leader keeps creeping back into his life. Sally can't cross over into the other side until she settles her affairs, like how she died. Hint, her husband did it. Who would have thunk it? The interesting part about this though is once she finds that out, she's still a ghost, so clearly there's more for her to do. The main problem the trio face other than trying to simply fit in is the vampire cult leader I mentioned earlier. His name is Bishop, and he serves as a catalyst for pretty much every problem during the first season. Bishop wants vampires to be integrated into society as well, but mainly so it's easier for them to operate and consume humans as they please. But if I'm being honest, the show doesn't shine because of any villain, at least at the start. Being Human works because instead of highlighting their monstrous traits, the struggle is always how do we overcome our monstrous nature and despite them, live for the greater good. Being Human came out during sci-fi's peak era with other shows like Haven and Face Off dominating. Surprisingly, sci-fi is still ongoing today, but then again, who really is watching cable anymore? But eventually the show was cancelled due to low ratings yet again. I will say though, I watched Being Human more than any other show in this video, and I was lying to myself saying it was for research, but it gets to a point. Hell, after this video I might watch more.
What's wrong with that?
Nothing at all.
Nothing's wrong with it.
So?
No, I'm saying
now?
To be fair, this is also the show I remember the least about, except for one other. But
It's a surprise.
in the current era of horror movie franchises, reboots are certainly taking the cinema by storm. There is, however, one franchise that is ahead of the game, and that franchise is Scream. Despite any controversy that revolves around the latest movie and its previous main characters. But that's not really what I'm here to talk about, because I'm betting you either didn't know or you forgot about the 3-season TV show spin-off that aired on MTV. Now I know what you're probably wondering. Was it good? And my answer? Kinda. Our inciting incident is when one of the main characters, Audrey, has a lesbian encounter leaked online and the video goes viral. Good old cyberbullying. I know, it doesn't really seem like a good reason to kill random students in your local town, but you have to understand, it was 2015. If you didn't know, every Scream movie has an opening murder scene where some pretty heroine gets stabbed and sometimes she's played by someone relatively popular at the time. Let's see who it is this time around. Wait, is that Bella Thorne? That's a lot of Disney actors for one video. Gotta be some type of pattern. Anywho, this show has a lot of moving parts and a lot of characters, but all you really need to know is Emma, the main girl, Audrey, the girl in the video, Noah, Audrey's best friend, who functions as the meta monologue and exposition dumper.
You can't do a slasher movie as a TV series. Well, think about it. You know, girl and her friends arrive at the dance, the camp, the deserted town, whatever.
And then there's more like Will, who's Emma's boyfriend and has a side plot where he made a home video with the girl from the beginning. Then there's Brooke, who I'll talk more about in a second. Now, as corny as all this sounds, the show for sure has its moments. Sometimes the mystery is genuinely fun to watch unfold, and the kills are legitimately kinda crazy. For the most part, the characters that you hate normally get what they deserve, so that's fun I guess if you're into that sort of thing. Scream does have a problematic relationship between a student, Brooke, and a teacher, which at first is played off as a fantasy, which is really fucked up because the student is no older than 17, and their storyline is pretty important to the plot. Now later on their dynamic changes, but it's still a hard watch when those two are on screen. Side note, MTV had a problem sexualizing teens, but that's an issue for another day. I honestly believe one of the main reasons this show got canceled is because of the horrible screen mass. Like, I get it, you want to be different from the movies, but that's like the worst way to do it. Why would you change the one thing that denotes you're a part of this franchise? Like, imagine if Welcome to Derry said, fuck it, instead of a clown, let's make this nigga Pennywise a pirate. Really, the only connective tissue that's present is the meta commentary that the franchise is also known for. They also don't discuss the murders from the first Scream movies or even the in-universe Stab movies. Instead, they went with a completely made-up mystery. Emma's the daughter of a literal town legend. Basically, the town's resident murderer was in love with Emma's mom, so anything that has to do with murder has a way of being linked back to them. Now, if I'm being real, this is the only show I didn't want to watch more than the necessary amount, but in my defense, I can't really explain much more of the show without going into a full breakdown of the season. But if you're a fan of the Scream series, like the movies, it's a relatively entertaining, albeit ignored addition to the franchise. Oh, and it's pretty funny.
You're like a ninja.
That's racist.
What? Oh, no.
That's actually hilarious.
Have you ever wondered if there's any truth to the whole Roman Empire meme that spawned a couple years ago? While every girl was trying to figure out why men were so obsessed with this period of history, it made me realize that I didn't understand the obsession either. But it did trigger a memory about a show I hadn't thought about in years. The show, of course, was Rome. Remember that surprise I mentioned? This is it. Because if Scream wasn't cheating, this for sure is. But damn, God forbid a guy wants to have a grandiose ending. And if you thought there was a lot of moving parts with Scream, you don't know the half of it. Yeah, this show has so much going on, I don't really know where to begin. But hey.
Job's not finished. Job finished? I don't think so.
To give you a brief synopsis, the series is a historical fiction that follows the fall of Rome and immediately thrusts us into the conflict between Caesar and Pompey. Now, if you're not a history buff or chronically online in 2024, all you need to know is Rome has seen better days. Riots, coups, regime changes, all sorts of messed up shit. Now at this point, the higher ups in Rome have grown tired of Julius Caesar, and about half of them want to usurp him. This Logan Roy looking motherfucker decides him and his people are gonna go do the usurping. Now Rome has found itself in the midst of a civil war. To be fair, Caesar did kind of force everyone's hand, but to understand why, that requires more details about the politics within the show. And my guy, I'm not explaining all that shit. That being said, if you really want the specifics, I recommend watching it because a show of this scale could fit in a video by itself. The show also follows Titus and Lucius as they try to live some semblance of a life as Roman soldiers dead smack in the middle of this conflict. Their viewpoint in the beginning propels the plot. And speaking of the scale, this show is just something to be in awe at. From costume design to the sets, there's always something to catch your attention outside of the show itself. And if that didn't help, then the large amount of nudity should surely pick up the slack. You thought Game of Thrones was bad? Where do you think HBO got the idea from? I'm not gonna lie, when I first watched the show, I was pretty young, and it was surely not for kids. We actually had a box set, and I would sneak to watch it. But if I'm being honest with you, I genuinely just thought the show was fire. I had never really seen anything like it before, and neither did the majority of audiences, which is how it became so critically acclaimed. So now the question becomes, where did it go? If it was so epic and had so much time and hard work put into it, what could have possibly have happened? Money, obviously money. Rome had a cost of around $100 million a season and was just not bringing in the numbers to support it. So after the second season, the HBO board members took a metaphorical stand-in for the show of Rome and metaphorically stabbed it to death. But like I said, I had the box set, and I imagine a lot of others did as well because it became a bit of a cult classic due to insane DVD sales. But as it fell deeper and deeper into obscurity, it became all but forgotten. Then Game of Thrones came by to spit on its grave for good measure. If you haven't watched any other show in this video of mine, I recommend this the most. It's about 21 years old now, and personally I think it made shows like Game of Thrones and FX's Shogun possible. You know, I had a lot of fun taking this trip down memory lane. I never thought about just how many shows I've watched as a kid that shaped me, and how many more shows I could talk about in a similar format. Like, I didn't even touch on cartoons. So if that's something you'd be interested in, let me know. In the meantime, you should think of some shows that have sunken into the liminal spaces of your mind. Shows you used to wait weekly to watch and talk about with family and friends. Shows that allow you to escape from the roller coaster you know life can be. Shows that are neither gone nor forgotten, but somewhere in between. But for now, I'm Jamillion, and you're one in a million.